All right, next we have Claire. Yep, I'm going to rant about Claire. I don't understand Claire. All right, I don't need to come on here and tell you how good The Bear is, how good those first 2 seasons of The Bear actually are. It is genuinely some of the best modern TV to come out in recent years. And season 3 has just dropped, and it's rather divisive. People on Threads, people on X are all complaining that this season has basically fallen off. The Bear has entered its flop era. And look, I just need to say that I think this show is still great. This season is another great season of television. However, I do think if gun was held to my head, this is probably the worst season of The Bear. So today I want to talk about everything I loved about season 3, everything I thought could have been better, my hot takes about this season. I'm going to talk about the season as a whole, then I'm going to talk about notable episodes, then I'm going to go character by character, and hopefully this just serves as a great video, a great spoiler talk for those of you who have seen season 3 of The Bear. Now, first off, the show still looks incredible. In fact, this is the best the show has ever looked. I have always loved how this show looks. It reminds me of Atlanta and Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which both similar to The Bear have involvement from Hiro Murai. On top of that, the music is gorgeous. The performances are pretty much universally unbelievable in this season as usual. So everything technically is as good as ever. However, the big thing this season is pacing. It is either going to work for you or is going to completely tank the season for you. This season of The Bear completely throws out the chaos and anxiety and adrenaline that the first 2 seasons has. You get about maybe 1 or 2 episodes that are still in this kitchen, in this like raw, chaotic environment. But aside from that, this season really is not interested in that. The core DNA of the first 2 seasons of The Bear is kind of gone, and instead we are really going internal. We are really going in depth in the minds and hearts of our core characters. Now, sometimes even with that in the back of your head, the pacing is still a bit off. Sometimes there are scenes that don't go anywhere and it's incredibly frustrating. However, for the most part, I think the more somber tone, the more reflective nature of this season is actually going to age well. And I think if we get, say, 5 or 6 seasons of The Bear, and we look back at season 3 of The Bear as this calm before the storm, something that's setting up all the pieces for Carmy's eventual downfall and then rise from the ashes, or like everyone leaving The Bear and then pursuing better and greater things, I think we will look back on this season rather favorably. However, with that in mind, with the idea that all this character work is really mature and really well done, we do need to acknowledge that sometimes, yeah, the pacing is just a bit brutal in this season. For example, in the first 2 seasons, I remember I could comfortably watch 5 or 6 episodes back to back and not even realize how long I've been watching the show for. Episodes would move at such a lightning fast pace that I would finish an episode and be like, oh my God, is that it? Whereas in this season, there were genuinely episodes that went for 30 minutes that felt like they went for an hour. There are moments where the pacing just completely falls apart. However, there are other moments where this slow and deliberate pacing absolutely have the desired effect. I absolutely adore, and this is one of my hottest takes about the season, I absolutely adore the first episode of season 3 of The Bear. Now, am I in a rush to rewatch it? No, it is sort of like something you experience once and then go, okay, that was cool.
Wow, compilation for a whole episode. That is so brave. What a bold choice. I'm never watching this fucking episode again.
However, I absolutely love the montage storytelling here. Is it stuff we already know about these characters? Sort of, yes, we've heard about it, but we haven't seen all of this visualized. And I think it was just great to see what Carmy was like before all the trauma from this awful chef, before the trauma of Mikey. I think it was such a great episode and does a lot of backtracking character work for Carmy, given the fact that what we get of Carmy for the rest of the season is rather slight. On top of that, I think episode 6, the one focused on Tina, Napkins, is also excellent. That is another episode where the pacing is basically stuck in time, and I think it's excellent. I could have watched that for 2 hours. And next, episode 8, this is probably my hottest take about the season. Episode 8 is by far my favorite. I've seen a lot of people complain about this episode online and complain that this really didn't move the plot forward and it was overstretched and overlong. I completely disagree. I think Jamie Lee Curtis absolutely crushes it. No, her performance was not over the top. I know people like this to their core. This is an unbelievable portrayal of the overbearing like mother figure. I think it's absolutely incredible. I think the performances are stellar, and I was genuinely like moved by this episode. However, there are episodes that I find incredibly disappointing. I think a few of the episodes in the middle of the season set around the kitchen, around the restaurant, but not in the kitchen, in the restaurant, feel like a lot of characters are just kind of going in circles. And I think the finale of this season was slightly disappointing, not because it left a lot of plots in the air. I didn't mind the fact that we didn't move these characters forward too much, but I found the resolution of some of these plot threads that were in this episode rather disappointing, clunky, and strange. And I will get into the nitty-gritty of that when I go character by character. Now, I do want to talk about some of the writing stuff I did notice this season that slightly took me out of the show. I did feel like, for as subtle and restrained as this season was, I feel like some of the messaging and some of the visual language was a bit clunky. So even though I loved episode 1, that entire montage where it's jumping back in time and then to the present and communicating where Carmy is, I absolutely loved that episode. I found the constant barrage of flashbacks with like the weird film cut edit in episode 10, the finale, incredibly distracting and completely took me out of the show.
Do you want to step off for a second? A little too much?
Yeah, I think we could open a restaurant.
Who's we? We who?
Me and you, Mike.
Hey guys, why don't y'all stop? I'm gonna let Carmy catch up.
We used to do Julienne showdowns.
Now, this specifically rears its ugly head when Carmy is at the table and he isn't able to engage in a conversation about everyone's mutual love of food because he's like transfixed on the evil chef that was like awful to him years ago. Now, if you want a good example of how this should be done, in the season 2 finale of The Bear, there's a situation where Sydney starts to have a panic attack because she feels like the environment of the restaurant is about to descend into the chaos that made her quit the first time. And you have these quick moments from that episode splice into it and you get exactly what she's feeling, exactly what she's thinking. It's quick, it's precise, it's clean, and it actually feels like how memories work. However, for some reason in episode 10, they just keep shoving down our throats how awful this boss was, who this boss is. And it's like, yeah, we've seen this throughout the season. We have seen this throughout season 3 consistently.
This is why you're alone. You can't handle this.
I think you're so special.
You have shown us this mean boss, this mean head chef multiple times. It's like we know who he is. The issue here is in episode 10, the way it's communicating it to us is as if we've forgotten, as if we're stupid. It's really overbearing and just really distracting. Like, I feel like if they did it once, I'd be fine, but it was genuinely taking me out of the episode and the emotional investment, just how much they emphasize these memories. It's like, I get it. I understand. Show, like, you've done the groundwork for me to be emotionally connected in this episode. Please just relax, just a bit. They also do this with Sydney's character just a bit too much. Again, these little quick flashes that they used to do in season 1 and season 2, I'd be fine with, but they really get overbearing with showing how she's going to miss her friends and miss the environment if she takes the contract to go to that other restaurant. I just found the way the show was visually communicating to us what these characters were thinking incredibly clunky compared to the first 2 seasons. And on top of that, I think season 3 is so patient and so measured and makes us sit with these characters for so long that I think any viewer that is actually paying attention already understands this and already gets this. So I really it was one of the few moments where I felt like this show was appealing to a bit of a like small brain demographic. Next, there's no substantial time jump from season 2 to season 3. It actually picks up right where season 2 left off, like right where season 2 left off, and takes place within 2 weeks. And I found a few character dynamics and characters felt like completely different people, even though it's literally been like a week or two. It really kind of struck me as odd. Now, yes, I do understand that this season is looking to psychoanalyze Carmy and all his shortcomings and show us that his attitude and his worst tendencies can't last forever and can't sustain a healthy environment. While I understand where all these characters end up and the fact that this kitchen doesn't really resonate and connect with Carmy the way they used to, I wish it was a bit more gradual over the 10 episodes. It feels like the season starts and it's already at the end of the conflict. Carmy is already iced out. He's already seemingly isolated and rubbing everyone the wrong way. And I guess timeline-wise, it just kind of threw me a bit because it feels like at the midpoint and the last chunk of season 2, they did have the ability to work together well despite the chaos in the kitchen. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm totally happy where Carmy ended up and the fact that he's isolating everyone around him and they're isolating him in return. However, I wish it was a bit more gradual. It feels like season 3 opens and I got a bit of whiplash in terms of where these characters are and how they all treat each other and talk to each other and see each other. I don't know if I'm alone in that completely. Let me know in the comments if you kind of get where I'm coming from. One other thing I do want to talk about is the John Cena cameo.
His name is John Cena!
I found this so strange. Now, look, I actually like John Cena as an actor. This isn't like a beef of like, oh, he's a wrestler, he can't act, what's he doing in my show? Like, it isn't that. I actually think John Cena is quite great. He was excellent in that new Suicide Squad movie. He actually has great dramatic range. I just found the way they included him here, it felt like an SNL parody of The Bear. It felt like this weird skit, and I don't understand what they were going for. And I guess my thing here is the show has always been excellent at taking well-known character actors and kind of like getting them into the show and getting them to play characters completely out of type. Look at the inclusion of John Mulaney. Look at the inclusion of Bob Odenkirk, Sarah Paulson, even Jamie Lee Curtis. And I think notably the inclusion of Will Poulter. He is playing completely against type. However, for some reason, they get John Cena and he's basically just playing John Cena. Like, he is just John Cena. And I found it so distracting and kind of disappointed. It's the first time the show has got a notable star, and I've sort of been like, did you just get them to get some clout? Like, what was the goal here? Because character writing wise, really frustrating. Also, next, I found the humor at times this season a bit overbearing. The show used to be way funnier when it was more serious, and it had the humor of sort of Succession, where it's just characters being mean and cruel to each other and like great insults. The only moment that got a massive laugh out of me this season was when the uncle said Nunya. And while I loved the facts, I found at moments when they were constantly riffing and these scenes went on for 2 to 3 to 4 minutes, I did find myself wishing we could get back to some more substantive character work. And I found it a lot of times this season, I was wishing it had a tighter edit. Some scenes dragged too long and other scenes felt like they could have gone for a lot longer. So I do wish the editing was a bit tighter this season. However, I do just need to emphasize this show is still fantastic. The only reason I'm bringing any of this up is because I feel like those first 2 seasons were basically untouchable. And unfortunately, even though I absolutely adored episode 6 with Tina, I feel like in season 1 and 2, we are having amazing, emotionally resonant episodes pretty much every single time. Like, there were a few of those each season. Whereas in season 3, you are really clinging to these great episodes, which in my opinion were episode 1, which I know is a hot take, the Tina episode, and yeah, I absolutely adored that pregnancy episode. Yes, it really does sidestep a lot of the core momentum of The Bear, but I just think in terms of character work, character study, it says so much about the characters when we see who Sugar chooses to call in her time of need. I think it's absolutely excellent, and I think both actresses, not just Jamie Lee Curtis, deserve a massive amount of praise. Now, I do just need to talk about something. I have seen in the fandom that people are still like really shipping Carmy and Sydney. I am sorry, guys. I don't think this was ever something the show wanted. I think it's make it abundantly clear in season 3 that this is something that the show is not interested in. But like, what show are you guys watching? To me, it is meant to feel like they're brother and sister or like mentor and student. Like, it is not meant to feel like there is any romantic interest at all, in my opinion. On top of that, like all of season 3, Sydney is clearly not happy with him, and I actually think it would really be disrespectful to both characters if they hooked up. I think it completely spits in the face of what the show is going for. And I think the people that are rooting for this, I don't want to be too harsh, are actually kind of not engaging with the show the way they want to. Now, I might eat my words. Maybe at the end of season 6 of The Bear, when they come back for a reunion, they have a child together, but I'm really doubtful. I do not think that's happening at all. And I actually think it's kind of disrespectful to both characters and what they want.
The reason I say it's like disrespectful to the characters, particularly with Sydney, is like she has serious issues with Carmy as a worker. And I think reading into it as if like, oh, it's actually because there's this like unspoken romantic tension and she's disappointed that he's hanging out with Claire is kind of a juvenile read. Like, in my opinion, season 2, when she had issues with Carmy hanging out with Claire, it's because he was letting her down on the promises as her like boss and mentor. Like, that is the more mature read. Again, like, I may eat my words, but I just find it like a strange read.
But yeah, final thoughts on the season in general. I absolutely love the patient nature of this season. I just wish it was a bit tighter and its priorities were a bit better in certain moments. I absolutely love the character work that we get on Jamie Lee Curtis's character and on Sugar. I think in terms of the character work we get for Sydney and Richie, I actually think it's a bit slight for an entire season. I think the character work we get for Carmy, while substantive, some of it doesn't quite make sense to me so far, and I will need to see how this plays out in future seasons. All right, so now I'm going to go character by character. Carmy. Now, Carmy is bad. Carmy needs to do a lot of self-improvement. He needs to work on himself a lot. Like, I am not doubting that. I am not taking that away from anyone. However, I do think it is kind of interesting that his communication style was accepted for the first 2 seasons, and in season 3, pretty much everyone is pushing back on it from the jump. In Tina's episode, we get a flashback to Mikey and the way the beef used to communicate to each other, and it is very in line with how Carmy now communicates. So yes, I do think it will not last. I do think it's unsustainable, and I completely agree with the sentiment of the show that Carmy needs to break old habits. This is unsustainable. It is not fostering a good environment. However, I do find it weird that basically in season 3, he's the only one communicating like this, and basically everyone pushes back on it from the jump, even though mid-season 2 and towards the end of season 2, people were happy to communicate like this. It does feel like a massive shift amongst all of the characters in the kitchen that sort of came out of nowhere for me, and I did need to readjust the way I was watching the show.
Hey guys, I just want to emphasize my point here isn't that I think the characters are wrong for taking issue with Carmy. I think just the fact that it was like a universal opinion and you can feel it the moment the season starts felt a bit quick for me. I wanted, I guess, that to be explored a bit more gradually, because it felt like all of a sudden this thing that he was getting away with, he's just not getting away with straight away the moment the season starts, and I had to kind of like get my head around that. That's all. However, I guess a counterpoint to my own argument is maybe it's the fact that he got locked in the fridge and the kitchen realized they can basically function really well, if not better, without him. So then when he came back into the kitchen, they are a lot more harsh on him. It's like this tumor they don't want around. They're like, go away. Like we were good without you, and it's made them all realize that they don't need to put up with his shit anymore.
Also, I do need to push back on one take a bit. I do not think Carmy has become the head chef he hated, all right? I do think he is on the way to becoming the head chef he hated, and I do think that the last episode serves as a warning for Carmy. However, I do not think he is as bad yet. He is not getting up in everyone's ears and basically blaming them for the death of relatives and causing them intentional psychological breakdowns, and I do think that's important. Carmy is a lot more reactive to his situations. He's a lot more explosive, but it is more situation-based rather than personal insults that are trying to completely break a person down.
My point here is basically that just like, I don't think Carmy is intentionally trying to traumatize and hurt people and gets joy out of doing that. I do think he regrets it when he gets flustered and angry in these stressful environments, and it is something that he obviously needs to work on. I guess the best example of him getting close to the chef is maybe in season 1 when he had his outburst at Marcus for interrupting him with the dessert in that like Uber Eats episode, I think it was. But aside from that, I don't know. I just don't think Carmy is that cruel. It's more so just like these outbursts that come from his like inbuilt trauma and like terrible stress response.
I've seen the read that the point of episode 10 is that Carmy realizes he has become the monster, and I don't think it's quite that. To me, what it feels like is he is sitting at that table and realizing he does not have this relationship with food. He does not have the love for food that everyone on the table around him does, and he realizes that that head chef is to blame, and he also realizes that if he stays on this path, he will become more and more like the head chef. But no, I do not think Carmy has already become the head chef. Like, I don't think he's that bad. I think he can be redeemed. Also, while we talk about Carmy, I find the fact that everyone basically blames him for the breakup with Claire Bear and shows him like no empathy or sympathy a bit strange. This is like another hot take, but I feel like Claire was slightly harsh. Hear me out here, but if I got home, right, and my girlfriend was like somehow stuck in the laundry or stuck in the bathroom, like if something had gone wrong, right, and I walked in on her and she was clearly having like a hysterical meltdown where she was going, oh my God, this is why I can't do anything. I tried to clean the bathroom and now I'm locked in the room, and like, who am I? I can't have a relationship. I can't have anything because it's a waste of my time, because look what happens when I try and do anything. Maybe I'm not cut out for it. If I walked in on that, right? Yes, it would hurt. It would absolutely crush me. But my first thought would be, okay, I'm going to be here, get them out of this thing and actually clarify what they meant, because they were clearly in a moment of great stress and having a complete mental breakdown. And the fact that like no one in the kitchen ever kind of like asks him about this or checks in on him and goes like, oh, that would have been tough, feels really strange to me. And yes, I know Carmy is standoffish and he is so hard to talk to that he's probably pushed everyone away at that point. But yeah, I just found this slightly strange, and no one even questions like, oh, it was a bit strange of Claire that she never got any any clarification on this or anything, in my opinion. Maybe that's like a god-awful shit take, but yeah, I found Claire a bit unsympathetic in that situation. Now, aside from that, I absolutely love the way Carmy is stuck in place here. To me, my read of why Carmy is the way he is in season 3 is because he got locked in the fridge at the end of season 2, right? And the kitchen, despite everything he did to get the kitchen, to get the restaurant to this standard, we do actually owe a lot of gratitude to Carmy for like bringing the restaurant up and creating the bear. However, despite all of Carmy's effort, when he was locked in the fridge, right, the kitchen still functioned. Sydney crushed it. The kitchen still went well. Everything went well without him while he was locked in the fridge. And I think what's going on with Carmy is he knows that. It's like building in the back of his brain, right? He's like, oh my God, like they actually function well without me, if not better. And maybe they don't need me, this thing I built. You know, the way I talk and communicate and like hurt myself for this kitchen isn't even necessary because I was locked in a fridge and they all did fine. And I think that is what's driving Carmy nuts. That's why we get this version of Carmy that's like, oh, we've got all these unreasonable non-negotiables and we're going to change the menu every day and doing all these irrational, self-destructive things. I think it's because he needs to prove to himself that he's still useful. And this whole quest for a Michelin star is this tragic attempt for him to make himself feel like he's useful in this environment where the people don't really need him. You know, Carmy at this point feels like a tumor that they need to cut out. Despite all the great things he's done to get the restaurant to this standard, they don't need him anymore. And I think he needs to create things that they need, like the Michelin star, to feel necessary and create problems that aren't really there. I think it is a great examination of Carmy, and I love what they did with him this season. I found it really frustrating at first, but I talked it out with a few people, and looking back on it, I do really like it. Again, I do think episode 10 was a bit simplistic in the way they approached his character. I didn't love the confrontation he had with the head chef, but it might be the point. I'm curious whether the read we were meant to have is, fuck yeah, Carmy, show that guy who's boss, or whether we were meant to sit there and go, Carmy's being angry and brash again and letting this guy get the best of him and exhibiting some toxic behavior that he really needs to expel from himself. Depending what the read of that scene is meant to be will determine how much I actually like the scene. But I did find the tonality and the messaging in that sequence a bit clunky. I will need to rewatch it. I might do a follow-up video on The Bear season 3 when I rewatch the season and see what I can really pull from that scene, because as it stands, I felt it just a bit clunky and I didn't quite get the emotional punch I really wanted to. Okay, next, Sydney. I absolutely love the conflict that Sydney is going through here, right? Carmy promised that things would be different, things would change, and they haven't changed. They're still awful. This is not an environment that she can thrive in, and she wants to leave. There is a great offer on the table for her. She can leave if she wants to. It is a great problem that is set up for her, and I absolutely love that she's basically sitting there begging Carmy to like get her to stay. Now, she isn't saying that outright, but basically she's trying to give him as many chances as possible to change, to take her suggestions into consideration, to actually care for her and fulfill on the promises that he laid out to her. Yet time and time again he fails, and I think the anxiety attack, the panic attack she has at the end of the season about this situation, looking back on all the people she cares about, is genuinely excellent and really well earned. And even though I felt like her character was a bit slight this season, and I wish we got more of her and I wish we got more depth and more substance, I think the conflict itself is fantastic. Now, I will say, I do think the guy that is offering her this amazing position is buttering her up a bit. I don't think if she goes to another restaurant, the communication is going to be 100% perfect, but it damn well will be better than what she experiences with Carmy. And I'm really curious to see whether she leaves. Now, I actually hope she does leave, because I think what the show is getting at here is we are getting ready for Carmy's downfall before he really needs to turn himself around and turn the restaurant around. He's going to push and push and push till everyone leaves him and he realizes what he's missed out on. But yeah, I really like the conflict that's being explored here. I really do hope she goes for the job. I'd be curious to see if the job is as good as she wanted, or if she actually misses some of the chaos and some of the loose vibe that the bear had and gave to her. I also love all the scenes she has with her dad, and I wish we got more of them. I think they're really good and really great moments to humanize Sydney, who sometimes can have such a cold exterior, it's hard to really tell what she's thinking and what she's feeling. Next, Richie. I absolutely love the character work they did for Richie this season. Again, I wish we just got more of it. I love the moment where he spots the fork on the floor. Now, apparently, this is a symbol that a Michelin star like viewer is actually like in the building. It is actually a little symbol. Now, this can either be a test to see if you actually notice the fork, or it's actually like a symbol to let them know that they're here. But I love that Richie spots it. And if I remember correctly, he doesn't actually let anyone know. Really interesting and fascinating. It's almost like he's not letting Carmy actually get what he wants, and really just there for observant viewers. Love it. Also love the scene between Richie and his ex-wife's like new boyfriend, new husband. Absolutely love that scene. It's great. Richie has had so much growth, and it actually feels like in between season 2 and 3, even though it's a few days, he's had like an exponential amount of growth. That's like one thing I do feel like they've thrown his character a bit too far forward, given where we saw him at the end of season 2. However, I do really like what they're doing here. I think he's infinitely fascinating. It feels like he's constantly moving and growing, and it's really well done, because when we see him interact with the people from season 2, the episode Forks, he is clearly more refined. He knows what he's doing. He's more comfortable. He knows how to communicate more effectively, and they clearly look up to him more. A really well-earned moment, and again, another great moment of writing this season. I also love the way he communicates with Carmy. I love the idea that pretty much every single main character is starting to give up with Carmy, but I like the way Richie communicates with Carmy. It is disappointing at moments. However, he really does try to emphasize the fact that he does love him. I love the way that the voicemail doesn't initially work, and we are sitting in these conflicts. Circling back to Sydney just quickly, I love the fact that like a lot of her character work is her going through the same conversations and the same thought patterns. You can find this repetitive, but I think it's really true to life. And I think a lot of the fights that Richie and Carmy get into are also very true to life. You can tell that Richie is trying to leave this part of himself behind. He's trying to leave this combative nature he used to have behind, but if Carmy picks a fight with him, he'll jump right back into it. It's really, really great character writing. Fac, look, this season does a lot of character work for Fac. I like what they're going for with Fac. I love that he's a chef in real life. I do think he's a great actor. I love the moment where he comes to Jamie Lee Curtis's character at the end of episode 8. I think it's a really sweet moment. However, I wish we got more sweet moments rather than a lot of these extended comedic sequences. They didn't quite land for me. However, what I think the most fascinating thing about Fac's character this season is the fact that he goes the extra mile for Carmy as a friend. He really puts himself out there to be a good friend to Carmy, maybe to his detriment, right? But that scene where he goes up to Claire and really tries to put in a good word for Carmy. He really cares about Carmy, and Carmy does not care about Fac that much. The only time Carmy actually does talk to Fac is about work things, and that's about it. Carmy never really connects with Fac on a friendship level, and you can see in all these scenes with Fac by himself that Fac really looks up to Carmy and really wants to connect with him in that way. I think it's really well done and one of the more subtle stories that is told in season 3 of The Bear. Sugar, this is going to be maybe my hottest take of the video. I think this is maybe the best character of this season. I think she is so good. I think she's so compelling. They've really given her a lot to do. I think the arc she's going through of trying to avoid generational trauma with her daughter is well explored, well done, and god damn it, that episode with her mother was just pitch perfect in my opinion. You can tell that there's some things about her mother that she absolutely loved. You agree with her when her mum gets on her nerves, but you also feel bad when she cracks her. It is so well done, so well performed, and I really hope they are both considered for awards consideration, especially Sugar. I think it's really easy to just focus on Jamie Lee Curtis, but Sugar is absolutely excellent. I think she's great this season. I absolutely love the opening of that episode too, where she's like caught in traffic. So good. Like, so good. I cannot sing that episode's praises enough. And I love her throughout the season too. I love this like bad bitch attitude she has. And it doesn't feel like she's girl bossing too close to the sun. It doesn't feel like flimsy character writing. I think it's genuinely excellent character work. And she started as one of my least favorite characters. Now she is in like my top 3. I think she's genuinely great. Next we have Marcus. Another hot take. I loved Marcus the first 2 seasons. I think he was great. I think his performance was pitch perfect for what they were asking of him. I think the loss of his mother is absolutely tragic. I have a lot of empathy for him. However, his performance this season, it felt slightly off. I found it quite strange. I have grieved before. I've known people in grief. I know what they are going for. I'm just wondering if the actor doesn't have the acting chops or something, but he didn't quite pull off these moments for me. I found his speech also at the funeral, it just didn't hit. I thought the writing was a bit whatever, and I think if you're going to spend that much time on a funeral scene, I really want to resonate with it and connect with it, and I felt like the character writing they gave him just wasn't great. So it might not be a performance thing, it might just be a writing thing, but I felt like this season, minus a few moments, he was a bit lackluster for me. I did, however, love the moment where he went to Carmy and was like, can we do this? And Carmy said to him, yes, chef. I also love the scene where they talked about, like, did you deal with the death of your brother? Like, how did you handle that? I thought that was a really great scene, and that was when Marcus as a character was really, really working for me. However, the other scenes, they just didn't quite land for me. I'm not exactly sure if it's a writing thing or a performance thing, but I did get taken out of the show a bit. Next, we have Tina. I absolutely love Tina's solo episode. I absolutely love all the workers and employees she has to deal with, this like Gen Z misanthropic, like annoying nature that these people have. I think it's a really true to life exploration of what a job hunt looks for a middle-aged woman. It's tragic, it's sad, it's funny. And I love the ending section too, where she talks with Mikey. Mikey, it genuinely feels like a surreal experience. The show has built up the legend of Mikey. It feels like you are seeing a ghost. It's haunting, it's effective, it's tragic. Tina is an excellent actress, an excellent performance, and Ayo Edebiri, who directed this, she's someone to watch. That was a great, fantastic, well-directed episode. So shout out Ayo Edebiri, because if she ever wants to direct a movie by A24 or something, I will be there opening night. That was just excellent. Great episode. Probably the second best for me next to the pregnancy episode, but fuck me, it's close. Like, it's a really good episode. And again, feels like The Bear at its best, in my opinion. Next, Jamie Lee Curtis as the mother, Donna. Let's just talk about it. I think this was fantastic. This was such a good portrayal of like an overbearing mother. There is equal parts like annoyance and tragedy and anger and frustration. It's so unbelievably good. Like, so good. Like, I loved her in season 2, and she is unbelievable season 3. I can't really say anything more than that. If you've seen the episode, you know, but like, I did not think this was over the top. I've met people like this. I think it was effective. I had tears in my eyes. It is such a complex, conflicting episode. And I love the moment too where Sugar's partner arrives and she sneaks out with the phone, like almost like, I was never really here. I know I was just here because I was a last resort. I'll see you later. Like, I was tearing up, and I don't know how it got me, because the mum was so overbearing and annoying at the start of the episode. But even thinking about it now, like watching her sneak away without even saying bye, like, I want to cry. It was so good. All right, next we have Claire. Yep, I'm going to rant about Claire. I don't understand Claire. All right, like I'm just gonna vent. I didn't love her in season 2, but I was like, oh, okay, like it's showing that like Carmy really can't balance this stuff, and he's gonna have this like internal crisis of like, oh my god, I can't have a girlfriend, which was the payoff. However, the way characters talk about Claire, it's like she is this omniscient being. All right, like they talk about Claire like she is the next Messiah. They're like, Claire Bear. Oh, I heard about Claire Bear. Like, it is so strange. I'm like, when was this built into the show? Like, it's like, stop trying to make Claire Bear happen. It's not going to happen. Like, I find it so bizarre. It feels like weird retconning just how much they love Claire. You know, not one person has given any credence or consideration to the state Carmy was in. And yes, Carmy is a problematic little piece of shit, all right? Like, I do understand. However, I just feel like she is lacking so much empathy in that specific situation. I don't think she needs to take him back straight away, but no conversation at all. No one even says to her, like, hey, Carmy was literally locked in a freezer and having a meltdown. Like, no one has any normal discussion about this situation other than Claire Bear's an angel. You really fumbled the bag. I find it so strange the way they talk about Claire Bear. She is just like up here, you know, she's just God's gift to earth. Apparently everyone knows about her, everyone cares about her. She is like, she genuinely feels like she is the next coming of Jesus, and like the next coming of Jesus she is not, because that speech she gives, that story she tells about the patient she accidentally gave the wrong medication to, and she was really worried that they were going to like die or have a severe allergic reaction, and then they woke up and just started hysterically laughing. I'm sorry, I was sitting there that whole time. The performance was grating, the story was boring, and I was like, oh, surely the payoff for this story, surely the ending, I'm going to be like, wow, or like, ha ha ha, that was hilarious, or like, oh, that's so moving. That was one of the worst stories I've ever fucking heard. Like, is the point literally just like, oh, sometimes you have to go through pain to get to the other side? Like, really? In my opinion, what would have been more interesting and where I thought the story was actually going was that this woman was like abused by her partner, hence all the cuts and stuff all over her body. And then when she woke up, she was actually thankful to Claire because the slip up with the medication meant she got to stay in the hospital more away from her abusive partner or something. I thought that's where it was going. I thought that was going to be a really interesting story. But the story we got was just dumb gobbledygook. I'm sorry. Claire's not working for me. And it's not that she's not working for me because I'm rooting for Carmy and Sydney. Like, absolutely not. Absolutely fucking not. Anyways, look, I really, really like this season. I did really like this season. I was like driving around this morning and I was like venting my frustrations with this season. It is the worst, and there is some really bad pacing, and I didn't like episode 10 that much. But honestly, like, I really like the fact that all these characters are stuck in place and we just have to sit with them there for a bit. Now, it is a bit sad that we have to wait another year for the season. And I do wonder if the fact that season 3 and season 4 were filmed back to back, that the writers were basically just like, yeah, we can take our time here. But in all that being said, it's not nearly as bad as what Twitter is saying. It's still a great show. It's still a great season. Yes, there are some cracks, unfortunately, but overall, I would still gladly recommend this season. Now, do I think the show would be held in such high regards if it came out of the gate with a season like this? No. I actually do think season 3 is working off the good faith that season 1 and 2 have built. And I do think if this show started like season 3, a lot of people wouldn't have got through it and wouldn't watch it. But I mean, that is art, right? Like, it does build off itself. And maybe this is just a season 3, like, ambitious thing they are trying to do before we get back into season 4, 5, and 6. It will be interesting to see the legacy of this season. I'm really curious to see how it ages. Regardless, thank you so much for watching. If you want another video about the bear, I will be reading all the comments. I will, like, you know, take it all into consideration, have my eyes opened by different interpretations, and do a follow-up video if it's worth doing. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know what you'd like me to talk about next, and have a lovely day. Thank you.